Welcome back. Now, the question I want to ask off the bat is it over already? Is the championship done? Um, it might be. The way Charles Leclerc is doing it, I just can't imagine. Like, if the car remains at the front, like as long as it doesn't put any upgrades on that make it go backwards, the way he's fighting is just. I mean, I think we knew he'd be this good. Obviously, we knew he was going to be this good. But what I think all the question marks about Leclerc was when it gets down to the pressure points, he always makes mistakes. He's prone to mistake. He is quite emotional. Out of the top three, because at the minute now, there's definitely Hamilton is kind of up there, but in his car, he's probably not. Obviously, out of Verstappen, Leclerc, and Hamilton, he makes the most mistakes out of the three of them, and he's the least cool under pressure, and he is the least experienced. Obviously, now he's only won. I think that was his fourth win now. So he's only won 4 races. Like, he only won 2 races before this season. So, he's got 13 pole positions now. I think 13 pole positions. So he's quick, but race pace and managing tyres and managing gaps, going into combat, all of these things he's just upgraded this year, and he's learning with a brand new car against a current world champion in Verstappen in a car. I mean, the Red Bull is kind of close enough, but it's an evenly matched machinery. So he's not in a car that's like light years away. So he's not like 2 seconds quicker than everyone else and just flying away. He is literally in a car that's as good as 3 other drivers, so his teammate and the other 2 Red Bulls, and he's just demolishing them. Like he drove away from Max Verstappen twice yesterday, 3 times technically, if you could include the very start, drove away from him. The first safety car restart, definitely drove away from him then. And the second safety car restart was the most important thing I think I found. He made a mistake out of the last turn, went sideways. Verstappen was right behind him. I think what I'm finding with these cars is slipstream's not really a thing. Like, I don't know what you guys have noticed. Like, slipstream's not even a thing. I've seen a lot of cars all the way through the back of the field follow behind without DRS, follow behind, and they're not doing the same. They're not making the same gains as they were before. So I've really noticed a massive difference with the car. I mean, the cars, if we talk about the cars for a minute, the cars clearly, it's a tick. All the regulations, in terms of, forget about who it's benefited and who it's disadvantaged, the cars themselves are, the regulations have done their job, completely done their job. So I'm happy. I am really happy to see, especially all the way through the field, all the way back, to the back. Guys are following behind and they're going back and forth over laps. And the DRS, I think the DRS is important. I mean, they took away the 4th DRS zone for safety concerns. Apparently, it's Fernando Alonso wanted it removed because the Alpine car was better without the 4th DRS zone. But that would have, for me, that would have helped because the track changes were good. So if we look at the track, turn one was a good change because turn 1 was always very hard. It always seemed very, very tight to get around that right-hander. So if you open it up a little bit, the more cars, because you want to get more cars going through. Like turn 1s historically have always been like, all right, race down to turn 1. You don't want it super tight down there because the whole point of the first turn, obviously you want to make it challenging, but you want to get all the cars through. You don't want the safety car in lap 1. That really does kill the vibe. You want to get everyone up and running and get around the first lap and all that kind of thing. So turn 1 was a good change. Turn 3, again, another very hard corner. Open that up a little bit. I'm not mad at that. Now, turn 6 was probably the best change I thought they made because that is making that quick to start that huge run all the way down to turn 11. That bit needs to be very fast. So if you open that corner up, make it a little bit less difficult, cars can follow through there at a bit more higher speed, and then the car behind, if he's quicker, can fly on through. That DRS zone, so from 10 to 11, should have stayed. Like there was a massive DRS zone in that second half of the section. Now they took that away because when you get to turn 11, it's a very fast left and then a right. So it's not really an overtaking spot. So I see why they, to contradict myself, I see why they took it off. Because if you're coming in there at 200 miles an hour, and then you got to take a fairly quick left right, and everyone flies off there anyway. You probably don't want people going wheel to wheel there at that speed and maintaining that kind of speed. It's not like we're going all the way down to like 70 miles an hour. You're going to be still doing 100 something into that left corner. So 2 cars arriving there with DRS, well, 1 car arriving with DRS, is probably a bit of a disaster. So I kind of see what they're doing, but they maybe have a DRS zone earlier. I don't know. I think there's still amendments they need to make to that track, but I'm not mad at it at all. Clearly, the race itself, again, I mean, it's weird because I thought Bahrain wasn't that good a race until you know the odd overtake, the 3-lap battle with Leclerc and Verstappen, and then all the cars broke down at the end. It was kind of exciting, but the race itself wasn't very good. Jeddah, again, the battle for the lead was very good, and there was a bit more overtaking, so that was a little bit better race. This race wasn't that great either. I mean, there's a bit of overtaking, but generally speaking, it wasn't amazing. Leclerc was dominant. Verstappen was just nowhere all weekend. So whatever about his car breaking down, all weekend he was off. You can always tell when Verstappen's off. It's very obvious. Because if he's on, obviously, he's straight at the front. Every practice session, he's out at the front. He's doing his thing. Then he was never really, all weekend, he was never really up there. And then qualifying, obviously, he missed out on pole. And then Leclerc just drove, like, people don't normally drive away from Max Verstappen, but Leclerc did it. He got fortunate that the Verstappen's car clearly wasn't up to whatever speed they wanted it. The reliability is obviously an issue. Break it. 2 DNFs in 3 races is insane. If you think about how often, like I said before, his previous streak of 27 races, he's had like 1 real DNF in the last 2 seasons, and now he's had 2 in 3 races, and they're just simple. He's just thrown away 2 second places. I mean, he hasn't thrown away. His team's thrown away two second places. And Horner, after the race, was saying he'd rather fix a fast car than try and make a slow, reliable car fast. So, again, take of that what you will. I mean, Mercedes aren't even involved in the battle. Well, they are technically, but they're not. And he's still... That seems like a shot at Mercedes for no apparent reason again. But I think a lot of people would probably disagree with that statement. I'd rather definitely know I'm going to finish, 4th, 5th every single race. And if the guys up in front think they're going to try and be too clever with their engine and not finish, they'll come up and take 2nd and take 3rd. So there's clearly a hierarchy. Obviously, the hierarchy has been established for a long time. So Ferrari, Red Bull, clearly at the front. No questions there. Ferrari are the best team, for sure. They've got the most reliable car. Their bouncing, their porpoising is worse than any other team. So Leclerc and Sainz coming down into the straight into turn 11, head bouncing. Like, it's savage. It's incredible. It's probably the worst porpoising I've seen for the whole start of the season. Like, Mercedes weren't that bad at the beginning. But when they get into the braking zone, their car just squats down and it's fine. So there's something in there. I think Mercedes, if they're going to get back into it, are going to have to look at whatever Ferrari are doing with their porpoising, because if the porpoising in itself isn't the issue. The issue isn't, the car bounces. Like, we know the car bounces, that's fine. The issue is, can you get it to stop what it's doing when you get into the braking zone and take a turn? Because that's what Ferrari are able to do. Clearly, Mercedes are bouncing up and down, and they're not able to actually squat the car down and turn. So the car's doing too much. There's no aero. There's nothing going in when the car wants to stop into corner. But Ferrari clearly are able to bounce, stop, turn. And it was most evident in that turn, that 10-11 little chicane. So Ferrari are on the up. The midfield, I mean, I said it, I think I said it in Bahrain or maybe after Jeddah, about Mercedes being in the midfield. Like, it is a midfield, like, it's for sure. And the interesting thing is, like, we're sitting now in Q3 or end of Q2 wondering who's going to make it out, because you've got the top 2 teams, so the top 4 spots are always going to be there, and then from 5 down to 10 it could be anyone. So Mercedes, McLaren, Alpine, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo and Haas kind of went way back. Haas, I don't know what happened to Haas this weekend. Maybe it's just a track specific issue. I think Haas and McLaren basically swapped places. So McLaren are now there or thereabouts with Mercedes. Alpine over a lap, I think, but they're dry. I mean, Alonso will be there. Ocon isn't quite there. I think this is probably where the driver lineups, like I was saying at the beginning of the season, that's where this is going to come into fruition, because Mercedes have obviously the best pairing overall if you give them all the best cars. McLaren have a good pairing. Alpine is a bit... I mean, Ocon's not quite there with Alonso. Tsunoda's not there with Gasly. Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu, he's low-key impressing me, not the most, but he's super impressive at how he's finished every race so far. And he's been really impressive for a rookie. He's not making mistakes. He's not doing Lance Stroll. We're going to talk about Lance Stroll in a minute. Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi. But Guan Yu Zhou is just like solidly putting in the races, not making silly mistakes, not getting his name up in lights. Obviously got points in his first race. And he's just going about his business. Like, he's really impressing me, Guan Yu Zhou. So I'm quite excited to see... Well, excited's not the word, but Alfa Romeo, if they improve their car a little bit, Bottas is solid. He's not spectacular, he's just solid. He does the job. He's not going to do anything crazy. He probably won't be able to, get you race wins out of nowhere and pole positions. He won't grit out a performance, but he will always be there. He's not going to make too many silly mistakes. So that pairing, if they get a really good car, that pairing could be... And another thing I was thinking during the race yesterday, is if Bottas, if he has a really good season, he could be looking to go back upwards somewhere. I mean, obviously not to Mercedes, but I mean, Alpine could be looking, depends on how good they are. If Alpine or even McLaren, depending on what Ricciardo wants to do, there's a few teams that if they get into a good position, they're going to want someone like Bottas there, and Alfa Romeo are going to have to do a job to keep him there if he's very good for these certainly this season and next season. So keep Alfa Romeo kind of like I'm impressed with what I'm seeing for Alfa Romeo so far. Clearly, Mercedes being third, they are still third best. There's no doubt about that. Over race pace. I mean, there was a time at the beginning where McLaren's were quite close. I think overall, Mercedes are still the third best team, which is crazy to think of, but their car looks so bad, which does kind of tell you how far... I mean, they've obviously fallen back maybe 2 seconds overall. Like I mentioned in Jeddah, their lap times have come back quite a lot, so now they're kind of fighting in the midfield. But overall, their strategy, their car inherently is very good, and their drivers are two of the best. So they're going to kind of maintain third. And the fact they are where they are in both, especially the Drivers' Championship, the fact they are where they are in both championships right now, if you said to Toto Wolff, okay, your car's going to be doing this, you're going to have this many issues, and you're going to be this far from Ferrari, but you're going to be P2 and P5 in the drivers, and you're going to be P2 in the Constructor Championship, ahead of Red Bull in both, is insane. Like, it's insane. So I don't know. Mercedes will get there. I don't think they're going to have enough time, depending on what kind of if they bring some crazy upgrade, because Imola's next in 2 weeks. So they've got 2 weeks to get all their data from Australia, build these parts, put them onto the car in Imola. It's a sprint weekend as well. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, Imola, Miami, and then Barcelona. So, Imola, obviously Verstappen won last time, and Barcelona is Lewis Hamilton country. So, we'll see. These next 3 races are going to be key. I think I will predict that much. I think the next 3 races are going to, for Mercedes anyway, they're going to be, if they can't win... If they can't win any of these next 3 races, forget about Mercedes completely. Obviously, I think most people are forgetting about them anyway, and rightly so, because they're not going to win a race anytime soon. But if they can get a win, if they can win, say, this next little mini segment overall, constructors and drivers, then it's a championship. If they don't win any of them, and if Ferrari extend the gap, if Ferrari are further ahead than they were now, forget about it. It's absolutely done. It's probably worth focusing on next year, or just trying to learn the car, or just not getting yourself in trouble, or try and beat Red Bull. I mean, that would be pretty funny if Mercedes beat Red Bull after all this. One little thing I noticed that there's going to be a thing going forward. Pitting for the fastest laps, the fastest lap point, obviously. I don't think we're going to see as much diving in the pits as we have done previously, because before, the teams were able to build up a huge gap, silly gap, and then just chuck one of their cars in when they had like a 45-second lead. Third to fourth was about 50 seconds. They could pit, stick new tyres on, go for the fastest lap. That's no longer a thing for the top teams anyway. So, I mean, we saw Alonso try to do it, which is a good thing that Leclerc did go for the fastest lap at the end, because Alonso would have beaten his time. So Leclerc, race IQ is just off the charts, clearly. But you're not going to get Ferrari pitting unless they bolt some more upgrades on and they just get even faster, which, I mean, who knows? People might get sick of that eventually, but who knows? So you're not going to get teams boxing for fastest lap, which is kind of good because you want the racing, at the end of the day, you want the racing to be close. You don't want it to be, 45, no matter who it is, even if it's Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, you don't want it to be, they're gone in the distance. We can pit our second car and grab that fastest lap. It shouldn't be as easy as that. It should be, we're all going to the end. Fastest lap is kind of like, 6-1 between loads of different teams. And then whoever gets it, based on pure race pace. You don't want to be pitting on fresh tyres because it's almost like a qualifying lap. It's not a race. The whole point of a race is, you're low on fuel, your tyres are a bit worn, your engine's quite hot. See how fast you can go then. We're not trying to do qualifying simulations in the race. So I think that's a good thing. So I mentioned the hierarchy. Clearly the midfield is 6 teams, which is good. It just means Q2 and Q3 are gonna be good. The battle for the 5th place all the way down to 16th, 15th is going to be covered very, very tightly. So all of that midfield running is going to be good. And clearly at the back, Aston Martin and Williams are struggling. Even though Alex Albon went 57 laps on the same set of tyres, which is impressive. I mean, I watched it back and I'm still trying to work out how he got all the way up. I mean, he got to 7th because he just didn't pit, and he was due to fall down to about 16th. And then the last 5 or 6 laps, he must have put on a really good pace, or everyone else dropped off, because by the time he pitted, he came out right. I mean, when Leclerc was coming across the line to win the race, Albon was coming out the pits, and Guan Yu Zhou was coming into turn 1. So, and I was watching the time; it's like 0.3 of a second. So Albon must have come out literally nose to tail in front of Guan Yu Zhou for that 10th place. So fair play, Alex Albon. I mean, it's one of his best results in Formula One, taking a good top achievement. To be fair, it's no joke to get one set of tyres almost the whole race. And Ted Kravitz was saying on the commentary, what's the penalty for not changing tyres? The penalty should be disqualification. You can't game the system, because if someone at the front, let's say Leclerc at the front, put hard tyres on and did the whole race and won by 45 seconds, you can't give him a 30-second penalty and he still wins the race, because the whole point is you have to change tyres. So there is no, there's almost no penalty, because then if you play it out to its end, let's say you give it a 40-second penalty or a 1-minute penalty, and then he wins by a minute and a half, or he laps everybody because he hasn't pitted, like that is conceivable. If the car's that good, I mean, some of the Mercedes could have done that back in the day. I mean, I think the Mercedes at some point have lapped everyone up to 4th. So if you say they don't have to pit as well, that's everybody. So you need to punish them. It has to be disqualification. So that was an interesting thing I picked up on the commentary there. Nobody really knew what would happen. I mean, Martin Brundle did say it's a 30-second penalty, but you can't give someone essentially a drive through for not pitting, because the benefit, the jeopardy of pitting and the time lost need to be more than 30 seconds. It can't just be, your pit stop would have cost you 30 seconds, have 30-second penalty, because that's not really the point. The whole point is you need to come into the pits, in lap, out lap. There's a whole strategy behind it. So that I found that very interesting. Finally, Grand Slam. You might have heard about it. Charles Leclerc. Here's the all-time stats. Jim Clark. So Grand Slam, for those of you who don't know, it's a pole position, win the race, lead every single lap, and the fastest lap. Now, if you think about it, I'm surprised that there's only this many, that Hamilton's only got 6 and Schumacher's only got 5. And fair play, especially Vettel up there on 4. I'm a bit surprised that it's only this many, because I'd have thought if you get in pole position, I mean, leading every lap, that's probably the difficult part. But there's been a lot of runaway winners, especially back in the day, leading every single lap. You're telling me more people haven't had pole position and gone on to win, which happens quite a lot. Fastest lap is, that might be the one, isn't it? I mean, leading every lap, if you're quick enough, leading every lap is probably quite easy. Fastest lap, it just depends, because normally if you are on pole and you lead every lap, typically you're miles out in front, so you're not pushing as hard as someone who's in like P5 with DRS and fresh tyres. So that is why, and before 2019, people can turn their engines up and down. So up until 2019, if you're out in front by 25 seconds, you're just going to turn the engine down, and then as the fuel burns off, your car's lighter, all the fastest laps are done in the last 10 laps anyway, typically. So if you're thereabouts in the last 10 laps, off you go. So I find that quite interesting when you look at some of the stats. This is obviously Leclerc's first one. Verstappen had one recently as well. But yeah, the all-time record is only 8. I mean, Jim Clark, legend of the game in the 60s, but Hamilton, Ascari. I mean, you can probably, that's probably why you can see Jim Clark, Ascari, Jackie Stewart. We're talking 50s, 60s, 70s. So it doesn't happen very often recently. Only the GOATs, so Hamilton, Schumacher, Vettel, have done it enough times for it to count. And then you've got people like Hakkinen and Rosberg have done it a couple of times, which you'd expect. I mean, Rosberg getting 2 is probably quite impressive. It's leading every lap. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I'm always impressed by these random stats. Leclerc's first ever one. He's tied with Verstappen. Him and Verstappen have got apart from the World Championship, at the end of the season, we're talking about, because I've got a video coming up about Max Verstappen. By the end of this season, if Leclerc wins it and he has a good season, comparing these two it's going to be like, okay, cool. Statistically, it's the same picture. Literally, by the time if Leclerc wins this season, their stats are going to be very, very, very similar. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Leclerc could be on something here. I'm liking what he's doing. He's got the right attitude to be at the front. He's got his race IQ is just so much higher than I think we've seen from him, because now he's at the front. He's in a race-winning car. He's got to think about these. He's not thinking about P4, P5, and he's all rushed to try and get on the podium. Now he's trying to manage a very, very good car to a championship, and we'll see. So the drivers' championship standings. Look at that. I mean, the name that jumps out to me is George Russell. I mean, how George Russell is P2 there, I do not know. Obviously, Sainz has DNF'd once, Perez has DNF'd once, and Verstappen's DNF'd twice. I mean, the fact that Hamilton's only 3 points ahead of Verstappen, and Verstappen's DNF'd from second place twice, it just tells you everything you need to know about this season. But I mean, again, if you're Ferrari, obviously you've got 1-3. Sainz has got, like I mentioned before about this 3-race stretch for Mercedes. If Sainz doesn't win, I said this last week as well. If Sainz doesn't win at least one of these races and closes the gap in the next 3, he's the sideman for the rest of the season, and he's just going to have to recharge and go again. Or he's going to have to do a Rosberg in 2015. Because Hamilton, in 2015, Hamilton had won, just absolutely dominated that season, won the championship by, I think it was Mexico or America, like 5-6 races to go. Rosberg, pole position, and won the last 4 races. And then the following season, he won the first 4 races the next season, and then he won the championship. So there is always something to be gained. Even if you can't win the championship, there's always something to be gained, especially against a teammate. Because what you don't want to do is just roll over and let him be the main man. What Sainz needs to do, even if this championship is done for Leclerc, is just make sure you get P2, try and win all the races you can, get your elbows out, and try and do a Rosberg in 2015. Because what you can't be is just your number 2. You can't be a Barrichello, Coulthard, I mean, Bottas. You just can't. Okay, it's Leclerc and Sainz. It needs to be. We need to have 2. You need to make it awkward for your team, basically. Make it a problem. Be like, we've got two top drivers going at it, rather than, we've got Leclerc and his teammate Sainz. And Sainz is obviously, his dad's a 2-time World Rally champion. He's not just a sideman inherently, so he's going to be mad. He's going to want to get back. The constructors, Ferrari running away with that one as well. 40 points is not that much. In the constructors, 40 points is absolutely nothing. I mean, that's, double DNF is, if you get your car wrong one weekend, double DNF. I mean, again, Mercedes, how on earth they're they're ahead of Red Bull. Again, we know why, but if you showed this to Christian Horner and Toto Wolff, they would not have believed you at all. And it is kind of nice having a different team, being obviously coming from last year. We're seeing a lot less of Christian Horner, certainly on the pit wall anyway. So we've had 3 races. If you follow me last year, you'll know my gripe about the pit wall. They just had Christian Horner, well, not literally every week. I think it was like 6 or 7 times they had him on, which is more than everyone else. Now they haven't had him on. They might have him on for next week in Imola, but yeah, they've kind of moved away from the Mercedes Red Bull thing. Toto Wolff, I mean, fair play to be fair, out the 2 of them, if I get my words out, it seems to me, I don't know what tell me, because I'm just projecting. So tell me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. I feel like Toto Wolff is handling this pretty. I feel like he's handling his situation better than Christian Horner. Christian Horner is always one comment away or one bad result away from just turning on someone. He'll turn on. I think I saw a comment recently about him saying about Daniel Ricciardo when he left Red Bull, saying how we saw Max Verstappen on the rise and he didn't want to compete with him, so he left. Like, come on, man. Helmut Marko is always saying something stupid about Bottas or Perez or Hamilton. Like, if for some reason, like for everything about Mercedes and Hamilton and Red Bull and stuff, Red Bull are always more salty than anybody else. Like genuinely salty. Like, you got Toto Wolff, he's German. I think that kind of like probably does mask it a little bit because the English isn't quite as kind of salesman-y, same way like Christian Horner. Because everyone, when we hear Christian Horner, we know what he's trying to say. We know what he's kind of insinuating or little jabs he's taking. Toto Wolff doesn't really take jabs. He'll say it how it is, and he'll be like, okay, yeah, he's talking about Michael Massey or someone like that. So, yeah, Red Bull are Red Bull. They'll get it back. Verstappen seems off. It's captivating. It's really interesting to see how Leclerc's handling it. Perez is outdoing, obviously, points-wise, but generally speaking, Perez is having a better season than Max Verstappen. George Russell's right there. George Russell, I'm going to finish on George Russell. George Russell is a bit of an enigma because 3 races in, he's doing his job. And I do wonder if he's been told, just hold station there, don't do anything too crazy, or if this is his 100%. Because if this is his 100%, I mean, Hamilton's obviously the greatest of all time, statistically or arguably, whatever you want to call it. I mean, Russell was right there behind him, but he is behind him. He hasn't gone in and done a Charles Leclerc on Vettel or a Max Verstappen. He hasn't come in there and gone, right, he's 2 seconds clear of Hamilton, like, what do we do? He is, behind Hamilton still, doing a good job, doing a solid job, but he hasn't been spectacular yet. I'm waiting for George Russell's arrival race. And I think one day it will come. I think it might come soon. I mean, that P2 in the championship, and if they fix their car, Mercedes could be there. And I think, depends on, for me as a Mercedes fan, it's easy for me to say, and I guess people in the media who say, oh, it's good to have Ferrari back or it's good to have a new team, they kind of mean it's good to have one team not in there. So if that team, Mercedes, come back, I wonder if it's still, oh yeah, it's good to have 3 teams fighting again. I don't know. I'm cynical. I'm when it comes to sport, I'm cynical. I just don't think that if and when Hamilton and Mercedes come back and it's a 3-way battle, people are going to be as excited as they were. So I genuinely do mean it would be good to see Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Russell, all going for it. I want to see Russell win. In this little triple header, I want to see Russell win a race and I want to see Sainz win a race. That's what I want. Because if Leclerc wins 2 out of 3 and just grows his gap, then we're kind of back to where we started. And I'll be interested to see how the narrative goes. If it's still going to be... I mean, people are going to want Leclerc... I do actually want Leclerc to win a championship, whether it's this one or... But I want him to win a championship because he deserves it. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the sporting narrative changes. So, yeah. Another one in the books. Got another couple coming. A couple interesting ones. Got some new equipment and we're pushing upwards. So, yeah, if you got this far, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, tell your mates, tell your nan, do all of it. And I will see you very soon.